And we are back with part two of the MGD Dynasty League. Just heard from our 12 through 7. Now it's time to get to the cream of the crop, the cock of the walk. 6 through 1 here. At number 6 here, Chris, we've got Nick Courtney sitting here at number 6. Nick Courtney, let's see what he's got here. They, them pronouns, Chris, for their team name, just so you know. We've got Lamar Jackson, Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce, Justin Jefferson, Steph Diggs, Cole Kmet, Amari Cooper, Miles Sanders, Tyler Lockett, and Kirk Cousins. On the bench, we've got Odell Beckham. We've got Purdy. We'll see what happens with him as well. Traylon Burks, Alec Pierce, the guy that I actually do like this year, Chris. Zach Ertz, Hayden Hurst, I think, is a sneaky play out there in Carolina as well. Nothing to mention on the bench. On taxi. No first next year. No first in 2025. Then things get normal after that. Chris, this team looks like it would have been amazing 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be bad this year either. I mean, I've got this team as a playoff team. I think it's fairly solid, right? I mean, across the board, the issue here the issues I have are twofold. One, what are we doing at running back? Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce, and Miles Sanders, I think are three question marks. And two, which kind of goes hand in hand, we don't really have any depth. And we don't have any trade pieces here to manufacture depth. So if one of these running backs doesn't work out, I think we're in big trouble here because then we've got a major hole at our flex spot here because we'll have to either move Sanders up to one of those running back spots, and then I don't know. I guess we play Zach Ertz, who I mean we both like Zach Ertz, but the Arizona seems like that Trey McBride kid, so I don't like the lack of depth and I don't like the lack of running back reliability here. And that's, listen, I've got this team at number 6. I think they're a playoff contender for sure. I've got them in the playoffs. I think when you have Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Steph Diggs, I think you're going to be tough to beat a lot of weeks. But I think at the end of the day, the teams above this team have better running back situations and better depth. So that's why I've got this team moved down to 6.
I like this team a lot, Chris. I really do. I think it's a team similar to what we would have built. I do like these aging pieces, but you said it, man. These running backs scare me. I don't think any one of these three guys is a shoe-in to be really, really good. I mean, I like Sanders. I think it's a good landing spot for him. I think they'll pound the ball a bunch with him. And I think he'll be okay. And behind that line, I think you could find real success. Pierce, we've just never been Pierce guys, period. And we own exactly 0 shares in about 40 leagues that we're in. And then Aaron Jones, I think that's another guy with 0 shares as well. So, yeah, Chris, those were the question marks come in. Love Diggs, love Jefferson, Amari. Lockett, you wonder what's going to happen, with him now that he's really the third option out there in Seattle. So, the depth isn't good, but it's not horrible when you've got Beckham and you've got Burks and Alec Pierce, Zach Ertz. I think those are guys that you can plug in. Hayden Hurst. Yeah, I think it's good. I think 6 is probably a really good spot for him.
And listen, I think there's enough talent here where this team could, make a run in the playoffs, right? Like I said, this team has actual star power, which you like. I mean, this is a team that could win on any given week against anybody in the league when you have Lamar Jackson, Justin Jefferson, Steph Diggs, and Kirk Cousins, right? I mean, those 4 guys are all capable of 30 plus points on any given week. And, in this league, that's going to be good enough to win a lot of games. So, I think this is a team that we mentioned in the previous podcast that a lot of teams didn't have that star power. This team does have some star power and is capable of beating just about anybody. So would I be surprised if this team won a couple games of the playoffs? Absolutely not. But in terms of ranking, I got to put them here at 6.
Yeah, and like you said, Chris, it's a team that probably doesn't have a whole lot of moves under his belt. I don't think we want to get rid of a Traylon Burks for, an aging guy that's going to be a little bit more productive. I think you kind of hit that with all these other aging guys. I think just keeping a Burks type player is fine. Just kind of ride it with this team. Like you said, could they get a little spunky in the playoffs? I think that could definitely happen. So, good team. We'll see where they end up. Chris, at number 5, we're heading over to chip chasing here. Chip chasing at number 5. We're looking at a team: Joe Burrow, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Amon Ra, Keenan Allen, Irv Smith, Joe Mixon, Nook Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, and CJ Stroud at Superflex. Who do we have on the bench here? Jerick McKinnon back in KC. McKinnon lovers love to hear that. Michael Gallup as well. Elijah Moore. We'll see what comes of him out there in Cleveland. Cade Otton as well out there in Tampa. Nothing on taxi squad. No picks in 24. Things get back to normal in 25. This team has the star power, Chris. Boy, look at those first 4 or 5 guys that I mentioned, and then we'll see what we get with Mixon and Hopkins. This team could really, really make a run. This is a solid squad.
Matt, there's one glaring reason why I have this team ranked 5 and not, 1 or 2.
Don't
I
you
mean,
dare say Irv Smith.
it's not Irv Smith. I mean, CJ Stroud, right? I mean, in order for this team to win the whole thing, it just needs CJ Stroud to play and be reasonably good. Listen, on today's date, how the heck I'm May 11th or whatever the date is. How can I possibly, project what CJ Stroud is going to be? I don't even know if they're going to start him. They may start Davis Mills this season, have Stroud sit behind him for all we know in Houston, the way they operate. You know, I, that's the one glaring thing just staring me in the face. Is CJ Stroud in the starting lineup? I mean, Brandon Cooks, he could be the wide receiver 3, 2, if we're going to start nitpicking other stuff. It's the one thing holding him back. If I'm this team, I don't know if I could do it, but I mean, there was one of the teams on the lower end at Dak Prescott, right? I mean, how can we figure out a way to package CJ Stroud? I mean, does CJ Stroud get you Dak Prescott straight up? I mean, I think we've seen similar in drafts recently, those two going similarly. CJ Stroud plus another small piece. Does that get you Dak? I mean, I think I don't know if the Dak guy would go for that because it's kind of a side grade kind of thing. You just gain back some years, but I've got to figure out a way to figure out this super flex spot, and I think it's wheels up for this team. I'm figuring out anyway. I mean, the 25 first gone. Do what you need to do. Get yourself a viable QB option at Superflex, and I think this team can compete with anybody.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris, here. I don't think CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, and DeAndre Hopkins, and Keenan Allen for that matter, belong on the same starting lineup, right? I mean, we don't consider ourselves to be the best at knowing like and predicting, evaluating prospects, but one thing that we do really well is roster construction. And when I see a team like this that's got some aging pieces, especially Christian McCaffrey and the guys that I just mentioned there before, I mean, there's just no way CJ Stroud is going to be elite this year. I'm sorry. I mean, that just doesn't happen with rookie quarterbacks with the amount of weapons or lack thereof that CJ Stroud has. So, what happens when CJ Stroud is a bench warmer this year and you don't trade him? Now we've just maybe wasted DeAndre Hopkins, Joe Mixon, and Brandon Cooks, and possibly Keenan Allen. And now we're looking at this team as being much worse next year when we start to see a better CJ Stroud. So, that's what we come in here for. We talk about roster construction, and CJ Stroud it definitely sticks out here. The fact of the matter, though, Chris, is that he's bringing in an incredible return right now. I would absolutely consider CJ Stroud and a small piece, maybe just like a 2025 second for Dak Prescott. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's just staring us in the face here as you look at this team, right? I mean, you've got this 25 first, which I mean, I'm selling that for an upgrade over Brandon Cooks all day, and then I'm selling Stroud for a quarterback. I mean, I don't at this point, I think you can get, a comparable veteran quarterback who's going to put up way more points than Stroud is this season. I'm just going for it. I mean, if I've got Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, guys that are still in their prime, but on the back end of their prime and scoring tons of points, along with Joe Burrow, who just lights up the scoreboard week in, week out. I'm going for it. I'm pushing my chips to the middle, and I'm going for it every which way, and I'm selling off every single piece I have to get that title.
After all, Chris, his name is Chip Chasin at
You
number
like that?
5 there. All right, Chris, the moment we've all been waiting for here at number 4, Z Zaino. Clearly, Z Zaino here at number 4. Boy, I like this team here. Chris looks very, very nice. We've got Herbert, Dobbins, Montgomery, DK, Michael Pittman, Mark Andrews. We've got Hawkinson, T. Higgins, Drake London, and Russ Wilson. Guys on the bench, we've got Gardner Minshew, maybe worth a mention here. AJ Dillon, Khalil Herbert, Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, Jacoby Myers, KJ Osborne. That's about it here. Nothing on taxi worth mentioning. First is his. He's got a second, couple thirds, an extra third in 2025. Good team here, Chris. I kind of like where it's at in terms of the career arcs of most of these guys. We're still at the beginning of the prime, I think, where we've still got improvement possibly in the cards for a lot of these guys. So I think this team is trending up. It's going to be good next year. I think it's going to be, good this year, great next year.
Yeah, I like this team a lot. I think this team's really good, Matt. The one note I had on it was that I think, it could improve running back. He needs a little bit of help at running back. And I think, it's wheels up for this team. Where he gets it, I don't know. He does have his 24 first next year. He's got his picks intact, 25 first. So, I mean, he's got plenty of talent on this team. I think I would look to maybe pivot off some of my wide receivers that I have because I'm loaded at wide receiver, right? I've got DK, I've got Pittman, I've got T. Higgins, I've got Drake London, I've got the two stud tight ends there. I've got Mike Williams, even, Quentin Johnston, I just drafted this season. So when I'm ready, I don't know if it's going to be this year, Matt. I think you said it right in that I think this team could be even better next year. But if it is this year, I would try and find a way to upgrade my running back spots the best I can, right? Because I don't know what I'm going to get out of David Montgomery. He's going to be second fiddle, I think, to Jahmyr Gibbs, and J.K. Dobbins has had the injury history. He's looked great when he's been healthy, but again, I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of him. And we've got really nothing to speak of on the bench. AJ Dillon, Khalil Herbert. I'm not thrilled with either of those guys. So I've got to figure out a way to improve my running back spot. Again, this is a move I would look for. After 4 or 5 games, I think of the regular season, kind of see what I could piece together for running back upgrades. You can always find, cheaper guys. Maybe this is a guy that goes out and buys Pacheco after a month and pays that second for him to just kind of give him maybe a little more stability or another option at running back, something like that. Because listen, you're not going to pry an elite player away. You're not going to pry away Bijan Robinson. You're not going to pry away CMC or Barkley or Taylor from any of these other teams. So you're going to have to figure out a way to get creative at running back and get yourself some upgrades for one season at a time, basically, I think. But, if he can do that, if he can navigate that, I think this team's got title potential for the next couple of years.
Yeah, totally agree. I think title potential is a good way to put it. But I could see the floor dropping right out on this team. I mean, I really am bullish on it. I really do like it, Chris. But I mean, we can go top to bottom here with the question marks. J.K. Dobbins, they're gonna, maintain that same run game. David Montgomery playing probably second fiddle. DK Metcalf is he's second fiddle now, out there in Seattle. Michael Pittman, who's throwing the ball. Mark Andrews, a little bit more target competition. TJ Hawkinson, more target competition. T. Higgins, still the number 2. Drake London, who's throwing him the ball, and Russ Wilson, enough said. So, I mean, that's just a quick run through of how things could really go wrong for this team. But, ultimately, I think that it's going to be okay. I like the bench a little bit more than you do. I think Mike Williams down there is going to be just fine. Cortland Sutton, a lot of people are down on him, and I just can't figure out why. I mean, he obviously hasn't produced a ton, but I got to believe things can only get better for him. I just don't see things getting worse. So I think the bench is going to be okay. Yeah, you're probably just sticking with what you have here because I think what you have here gives you the ceiling of a title contender.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I think the only thing I would consider is because you have a ton of you, all your depth is concentrated at wide receiver. So if I could pivot off that and get a little bit of help at running back, I think that's really the only obvious move for this team. Otherwise, I think you said you just kind of stand pat, see what you got, and kind of move forward with this team. Because there are some ways that the bottom could fall out of this.
All right, Chris, at number 3, we've got V Blade. V Blade at number 3. Jalen Hurts, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, George Kittle, Josh Jacobs, Zeke Elliott, Dallas Goedert, and Kyler at Superflex. We've got Jared Goff sitting on the bench. We've got James Robinson. We've got Juju. We have nothing down there. Trey McBride's an interesting piece as well out there in Zona. Nothing on taxi, no first or second in 2024. Everything's back intact in 2025. Seems ready to pounce right now, Chris. This is loaded up. This looks like it was almost entirely drafted in the top 6 rounds of a startup draft, including what, 2 or 3 first rounders, potentially 2 really. This is a really good team here, Chris. Well done.
Yeah, great team here. I think we've started now, I think, to start to see the legitimate title contenders. I've got this team third, behind the two ahead of them, simply because we've got, a question mark at one flex spot. That's how tight it is, really, right? We've got Zeke Elliott. I mean, who are we going to plug in there? Is it Juju? Is it Rashad Bateman? Is it James Robinson somehow? I mean, we really don't have a great answer on the bench for that one flex spot that looks a little iffy, but I mean, star power left and right on this team. Jalen Hurts can carry anybody. You've got Jared Goff if the Kyler Murray thing doesn't work out. You've got 2 great tight ends in Kittle and Goddard. I mean, elite running backs and wide receivers. I mean, this team really does have it all. He just kind of needs to find that one spot for Zeke Elliott. And I think he's got that complete lineup. Maybe does lack a little bit of depth. Obviously all the guys I've mentioned as potential Zeke replacements. But I mean, those guys are major question marks as well. I mean, James Robinson is third string right now, but been kind of a draft darling in these best ball leagues. In case Ramondre Stevenson doesn't work out. I mean, Juju, people are liking him. Bateman, he's got to deal with Zay Flowers now. There's a lot of kind of question marks on his bench and not a ton of depth. So he's gonna have to navigate that this season. But I mean, if that's your one hole, it puts him behind the other two. But there's no doubt this is a title contender with the top end down he's got.
Yeah, we've got to find a way, Chris. I mean, let's see what happens with Zeke. I think there's still a chance he lands in a fine place. And all the places he seems to be rumored to go are all quality places. And I wonder if that's why the rumors are happening. But geez, I mean, imagine him in Buffalo or we've even heard KC or even back to Dallas, I think would all be fine and worth keeping Zeke in the starting lineup, at least for this year. Potential move is liquidating Kyler Murray. And getting off of him and getting a drop down a huge tier in quarterback and adding a legitimate starter as well. I'm very confident in throwing Jared Goff into this lineup as well. So I think he's got a couple options. You said the depth isn't great. You mentioned a couple of those guys that, could fill the holes when necessary, but I think he's got to push the chips to the middle with this team here, Chris. Maybe not right away. I think we see how the first 3, 4, 5 games go, and then really start to make my push there.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'm waiting, honestly, Matt, because I've got Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler here, and their production window is closing pretty rapidly. I think you've got maybe 1 to 2 more years out of those guys at elite production, and then it's about the ball game for them. So I'm going to do what I can. I like that idea a lot, trading Kyler Murray for a lower tier quarterback plus a solid position player. I think that's a deal that gets done all day, especially from the bottom end teams who should be looking to acquire a guy like Kyler Murray on the cheap. So I love that idea here.
All right, Chris, time for our top 2. And at number 2, we're going with let's go Tinkertown here. Tinkertown at number 2. We've got Mahomes, we've got Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, DJ Moore, and Tua. Guys on the bench, we've got Rashad Penny with a little competition out there in Philly now with DeAndre Swift. What else we have? Not a whole lot here, Chris. Wandale Robinson, Jelani Woods out there in Indy. Taxi Squad's got Schoonmaker, who's an interesting play out there in Dallas. Picks are intact. He's even got himself an extra second, which I think he's going to love to have to, shore up a little bit of depth on this team. Chris, looks like the all value team from Najee Harris through Devontae Adams. These are all guys that are slipping in these startup drafts. We've drafted more Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, and Cooper Kupp than we know what to do with this offseason. Garrett Wilson's getting drafted a little bit high for my liking, but I think he's going to be very good. Devontae Smith's where he should be. DJ Moore slipping as well. Long story short, I love this team here, Chris. Very, very good. No holes to fill.
Yeah, I mean, it pained me. It pained me not to rank this team number one, Matt. I mean, this is all guys that we've been scooping up left and right. I mean, Kelsey, we pick him in the second round every single time. Najee Harris, we're getting in every draft. DeAndre Swift, a longtime favorite of CPMC. Cooper Kupp is slipping to where we're drafting him every time. I mean, and he's got Mahomes, the Mahomes Kelsey stack. Like, you start there and it's hard to not rank this team number one. But to me, the difference between this team and our number one team, I feel like this team is more susceptible to being caught out with a lack of depth. Right? We don't have a QB3 to put in on bye weeks. We don't have really much depth anywhere. I mean, granted, the starting lineup is awesome. Like it's really, really good. But if this team gets 1 to 2 injuries, I mean, you're going to be scrambling a little bit here. I mean, we're looking at the likes of Rashad Penny coming in, Samaje Perine. Who else here? We got Wandale Robinson is probably our best wide receiver on the bench. It's a tough look. I mean, I can't, even though the starting lineup is great, we got to start shoring up the depth, I think. But we don't need to do that right away. I mean, we've got a first, we've got 2 seconds, we've got our 25 first to work with. If we need to shore up our depth or add pieces if guys get injured, we can do that with the picks we have. I like that flexibility, but on paper right now, I got him very, very close, but he's number two.
Yeah, this team's really good, Chris. I can't even think of who any good players are left to be on this number one team. And you're telling me there's a whole crop of them better than this group right here. I mean, this team is great, Chris. I mean, God, any single week between Mahomes and Travis Kelce, you could have like 80 points there just between the two of them. The upside here is just tremendous. But you said it right, Chris. I mean, the depth is it may be the one thing that gets this team caught out. I'll be interested to see the type of depth the number one team has over this team. But I will say, Chris, this team has the ammo to be able to get that depth. And I think this guy's going to be smart enough to figure out the buttons that he needs to press to be able to get that. So I think this team is great as is. We'll see what happens with, how he decides to go about getting his depth pieces, but I think he's going to have to.
Yeah, at some point it's gonna, push is gonna come to shove, and he's gonna need to do something. Somebody gets injured, he's gonna miss 3, 4 weeks, and he's got to make a move. It's a great team though. I mean, I'm not gonna be shocked if that team, ends up winning, 12 games, or only loses a game or two in the regular season and storms through the playoffs. It's that good. The only knock, like I said, was its depth. And then we'll see here what number one has. But I thought number one's QB2 is slightly better as well.
All right, I'm trying to think in my head. We should see like Josh Allen, Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley. Who else am I missing here? I can't think of it. All right, there's those guys. All right. Oh wow. Okay. All right. This is an interesting one, Chris. I might need to hear some explaining from you on this one.
Just go through here.
All right, I'll do my job. We got Josh Allen, Saquon, Travis Etienne, Jamar Chase, Ty Hill, Kyle Pitts, Tony Pollard, Terry McLaurin, Darren Waller, and Deshaun Watson. Okay, I can see what you're thinking here. Kenny Pickett. Yes, a QB3. My guy, Kenny Pickett. We got a Shane here, Michael Thomas, Tyler Boyd, Gabe Davis, Jordan Addison, Gerald Everett, Dulcich there at tight end. Nothing really on the back end. Couple seconds, a third, a fourth. So no first really to speak of till 2026. So a little less ammo to fire. Oh man, Chris. I mean, it was just the quarterbacks that really caught your eye.
It's tight. I mean, listen, it's tight. I think we have a 1A, 1B, and then I think our number three team is a tiny, tiny notch below. But yeah, I mean, I think Deshaun Watson is just straight up better than Tua, right? I mean, yes, he's got the stack of Mahomes and Kelsey, but I mean, we've got Josh Allen, and I don't think Kyle Pitts is going to be a slouch this year. I mean, maybe that's fool's hope, and I'm going to lose that one, but we've got Barkley, we've got ETN. I think I love that running back duo. I mean, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill. How do you look away from that? He's got Tony Pollard at RB3. And I think he's got depth here, Matt. I think that's the big thing. He's got Kenny Pickett if something goes wrong with Deshaun Watson. He's got these running backs here that granted they're dart throws, Ashane, he's got Kenny Gainwell, Devin Singletary out there in Houston. Deontay Foreman's a guy who's catching a little bit of love. I mean, Michael Thomas and Tyler Boyd give him some options. I have wide receiver Gabe Davis as well. I think these are fine, plug and play guys. Jordan Addison off the draft this year. Gerald Everett, Greg Dulcich. I think this gives them options at tight end. I like his depth better. I like his QB2 better. I think the top end talent of our number two team is just a tiny bit better, but I like his QB2 and I like his depth better to navigate the season. And that's why I've got him one. I listen, you want to put our number two team ahead of him? Fine. I won't argue with you, but that's the reason why I've got Ziggy here at number one.
Yeah, I think those points are fair. I mean, in my defense, I would have saw the Mahomes Kelsey stack, which you hardly ever see any of in these leagues that we look at, and I probably would have stopped looking there and would have just marked them down with a big fat number one. But I think you're right here, Chris. For me, it's going to be that last flex spot. I mean, Darren Waller, I don't think that's it. It could be, especially where we're getting a little boost here with the tight end premium, and the depth pieces that he does have here. I mean, if Michael Thomas can be even just a shell of what we think he can be, I think that's going to be a nice little piece. I like this team long term here too, Chris. This is a very, very good team. I think there's a 2, 3 year window with this team that's wide open. He's just going to be sitting there contending for a title every year. I wouldn't do anything with this team, Chris, at all. It's got the top end talent. It's got that little bit of depth, but not like unnecessarily deep. Not as much ammo in terms of draft picks to trade away, but I think that'll be okay. He will survive. It's a great team here, Chris. You're right. It's a 1A, 1B. I think it's a fine choice.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're splitting hairs between these top two teams, and listen, the number three team is no slouch either. I mean, that team's really good as well, but I think one and two are a tiny bit notch ahead of them, ahead of number three. But yeah, I mean, it's very very good here. I mean, I think the question this team could be asking themselves after a month is, do I get off of Kyle Pitts? If Kyle Pitts starts off slow, I mean, could you imagine the backlash within the fantasy Twitter just going losing their minds yet again? Um, I think there's going to be a point where you may want to decide to get off Kyle Pitts. And, there may come a point where you say, all right, I'm going to see if I can trade Kyle Pitts straight up for TJ Hawkinson, and kind of do a deal like that just to get the production. And I would not shy away from that move. As attractive as Kyle Pitts is, people are still going to want to buy him because of that. And that may be kind of the one move that I could see this team making that may end up putting him over the top, is just getting that, a productive guy like TJ Hawkinson for Kyle Pitts. That a deal like that I could see happening. But otherwise, I mean, this team's loaded. I think we've got a fair bit of competition here in this league overall between the five, top 5, 6, 7 teams even that are going to compete here.
Yeah, I mean Kyle Pitts, back to him is one of those guys in these startup drafts that we're doing right now, and thankfully we don't have too many, if at all, of Kyle Pitts. But it's you swallow hard, close your eyes, and click that draft button because if you want him, especially in a premium like we have in this league, you've got to get him in the second round, and that is just a guy who just has not produced at all. We're basically just drafting him for his age right now and his potential, which you just hate to do in those top 25 picks. But if you want Kyle Pitts in a league like this, that's the only place you're going to be able to get him. So You'd have to miss me on him in this type of format, but he's obviously already on this team now. And again, if he hits, it's going to be massive. So, all right, Chris, let me give you the 1 through 12 one last time. Number 1, we got Ziggy. 2 is Tinker. 3 is V Blade. 4 is Z Zaino. 5 is Chip Chasing. 6 is Nick Courtney. 7 RHL. 8 Relaxberg. 9 Asal. 10 Dombus. 11 Crawdad Man. And 12 is Seaben. So appreciate you guys having us back. I had a blast with this one. I like to hear what you guys have to say about my pronunciation yet again this year. But we wish you guys all the best of luck this year and have a good night.